Hello, and welcome to the Edifice of Trust podcast. The Edifice of Trust podcast is a thoughtful discussion of today's current events from the perspective of America's founding principles.
Hello, everyone. One of my correspondents sent me a link to a Fox Business News story that quoted economist Peter Schiff as saying the rising price of gold was a warning of future inflation and a looming financial crisis. Mr. Schiff, also known as Dr. Doom, has had a controversial career, and his positions have been severely criticized by Nobel laureate Paul Krugman, which actually improves his credibility in my eyes. In a 2009 speech, Mr. Schiff predicted that gold, which was about $900 an ounce back in 2009, would eventually hit $5,000 per ounce. Gold is quoted at $5,560 an ounce as we speak. But Mr. Schiff's ominous warnings over the decades about rising inflation needed some assistance from Joe Biden to come true. However, Mr. Schiff is correct that there is something going on regarding gold, the dollar, and inflation. It is very clear that President Trump's tariff policies are shaking up trade policy around the globe, but they are also shaking up monetary policy. I have always asserted that the US dollar's position as the world's reserve currency is a great asset to the United States. But as I spoke back in April 2025, just another powerful country, President Trump's chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors at that time, Stephen Moran, now a Fed governor, views our reserve currency status as a terrible burden that has done great harm to our country. He believes that because the dollar is the world's reserve currency, the dollar is stronger than it should be, and because a strong currency favors imports and discourages exports, that reserve currency status is the cause of our persistent trade deficits. Also view my podcast, Who is Ripping Off Whom, published February 14th, 2025. Of course, Dr. Moran ignores our also persistent fiscal deficits that pump money into the economy, increasing demand while not increasing production, meaning imports must fill the gap. Tariffs are Dr. Moran's chosen weapon to fight persistent trade deficits, which is why Tariff Man, otherwise known as President Trump, hired him in the first place. Now, as a Fed governor, he will push to lower interest rates in order to further weaken the dollar and drive gold and other metals even higher, as he did in his dissenting vote at the recent Fed meeting. But are we heading to a dollar collapse and a financial crisis, as Dr. Doom is predicting? The answer is not so simple. Financial analysts, like the Fox interviewer of Mr. Schiff, point out that inflation remains moderate, although slightly above the Fed's target rate of 2%. GDP is booming, to a large extent due to the reduction of the trade deficit, since trade deficits are deducted from GDP. And the stock market is booming, because a company's value is based on production, not exchange rates. But we are not out of the woods just yet. Part of the problem is that Mr. Trump's tariffs are not just trade related. He threatened European countries with additional tariffs if they did not back his grab for Greenland. So tariffs can also be a geopolitical weapon. And he leveled 100% tariffs on Canada because he was pissed at what Canadian Prime Minister Carney said in his speech at Davos. It is not just the common folks on Main Street that get worried by President Trump's chaotic activities. It is also central bankers in capitals around the world. China's central bank is dumping dollars by selling its holdings of treasury bonds and buying gold. The United States is no longer a safe place to store your treasure. Treasury bonds are getting riskier, even as yields decline. Capricious and seemingly irrational policies decisions increase uncertainty. For many decades, the United States was considered the one safe place in a very uncertain world. That is no longer the case. I don't know if the financial crisis Dr. Doom is predicting is imminent, but there will be a day of reckoning sometime in our future. Decades of politicians more interested in getting reelected than in the good of our country have pandered to fickle voters with all sorts of enticements, along with the promise that someone else will pay for all of it. Electric car subsidies, no tax on overtime, you name it, and some politician will float it out there in the hopes of garnering a few more votes. And because taxes on current voters may cost some votes, and the repayment of loans by those not yet born do not, our government has run fiscal deficits for most of the last 5 decades. And persistent fiscal deficits mean our unsustainable public debt is becoming more unsustainable every minute. There is no magic pill that will solve all our problems, and putting all of our trust in a great populist leader is not the answer either. It is not just the politicians and bureaucrats that need to make changes. We will also have to make sacrifices as well. Our desire to have the government take care of us has weakened our government and made us dependent. That has to change. Thanks for watching.
Links to source material used in preparing this podcast can be found on my website, www.edificeoftrust.com.